Okay, I do need to ask you, you're Swedish. Is this a ploy to get rid of Americans in American companies? Is this a takeover?
No, it's actually pure coincidence.
So, Björn, why are you destroying Second Life?
We're actually doing quite the opposite. We're putting a lot of resources into Second Life to create new features and continue all the work we've done over the last couple of years.
Sansar is, what I've seen, really impressive. But my question would be, why do you think Linden Lab is uniquely qualified to build something like that?
It's actually pretty easy. I think a product is nothing without users, and we have a lot of dedicated users in Second Life, and we have learned so much. We know what our user wants. We know about virtual worlds like no one else in the business.
Will people have to choose between Second Life and Sansar? Is it like going to America from Europe and leaving Europe behind and never coming back?
You don't have to do any choice. You go where you prefer best, or you do both. Hi, I am Björn Loren. I am VP of Product at Linden Lab, and you're listening to the Drax Files Radio Hour with Joe Yardley.
Can you say that whole thing in Swedish?
Hej, jag heter Björn Laurin. Jag är VP of Produkt för Linden Lab, och du lyssnar till The Drax Files radiotimme med Joe Yardley.
Awesome. And cut. Hello there and welcome to the Drax Files Radio Hour with Joe Yardley. My name is Draxter Dupre. I am here together with Joe. We're back with season 3 of this weekly podcast. Hi, Joe.
Hey.
And Joe, we have to come clean with the audience. We're not in the attic in Berlin. Where are we?
And why is that? Because you couldn't afford your rent. You got evicted. And the rent is so cheap. It's unbelievable. You're just lazy.
Oh, come on. It depends what you do for a living. I'm a podcaster.
God, no, you just forgot to pay your rent. And that's when we kick you out because there's a waiting list. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are now in the beer garden, which, to be honest, is a better location. It's not too hot. There's a nice breeze. And there's loads and loads of schnapps.
The station ID today was delivered by none other than Björn Linden, who is VP of Product at Linden Lab. I hope to have him on with a more in-depth interview very, very soon. We're working on scheduling that.
Yeah.
Björn is working hard on Project Sansar, and as you know, the name of this show is Sansar Anxiety. Do you have Sansar? Are you suffering from Sansar Anxiety?
I never suffer from any kind of anxiety about anything ever. It's self-control.
No, I think that's the schnapps.
That as well. It helps.
Anyway, today's show is about speculation. What a surprise. Speculation and perception. What do we know and fear about Linden Lab's upcoming next generation virtual world? We actually have assembled a really cool panel to discuss it, not only from SL resident perspective, but also from the outside SL VR point of view. I'll introduce the guests after the housekeeping notes. You know how to get in touch with us. Avatar Drax Files. Send us news scoops, press releases by Wednesday, please. Thursday is the cutoff point. Let us know what's happening in Second Life and elsewhere on Skype. You can leave us a voicemail, and you can send us an email at radio@draxfiles.com. We're introducing a new segment today called Origin Stories. Yep, that's your story about how did you get into SL? When was that? Why was it? Who's to blame?
Oh, dear.
Oh, yeah. I want to hear your story, too, but not now.
Do you think I remember? I barely remember what I did yesterday.
Yeah, there's the schnapps again.
Yep.
So you got to share your exciting, uplifting, embarrassing story with us. Send us a sound file or just arrange a time with me and we'll tape it in World or on Skype and then we'll edit it together.
I'm looking forward to that.
Later in the program, we have, to kick things off, a real SL celebrity with a hilarious story. You can become a sponsor with us. You can have your own banners displayed on the website, mentioned on every single show. We have a whole bunch of new sponsors. We have Cube Republic. I want to single him out. He makes awesome things, little things, bigger things, plants, rocks, literal gems, stuff that fits in your small backyard or beautifies your gigantic sim. He built an awesome stage for the SL12B Music Festival. So Cube Republic is a new sponsor. Welcome. Dude, you have amazing talent.
Absolutely.
Now, you can support this show on an individual basis by taking out a voluntary subscription of $100 Linden. It's $25 Linden per show on average. Actually, the average is a little lower. Send us a message and we'll send you the subscription device made by Chris Lehman. Now, Joe, before we go on to the show, I need to clarify something because I was interviewed for QZ magazine.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we read that.
So QZ magazine is sort of a journalistic blog with writers formerly of the Wall Street Journal and other sort of high-profile publications. It's not quite the Huffington Post, certainly not longer-form engaged writings like you see on Medium, let's say. But it's not that bad. It covers politics, tech, culture, and sort of social issues. The article I was quoted in was called "Could the Oculus Rift Give Second Life a Second Life?" And it features primarily Ebbe Altberg, CEO of Linden Lab, with their goals about Sansar. The state of Second Life then in contrast to that, and also it also talks about High Fidelity and Philip Rosedale's aspirations. Hunter Walk, a former Linden Lab employee, back then the head of product development and an investor, is quoted as saying, "The fact that Linden Lab has paid out dividends to its investors is some measure of success, but I don't think any of the original team would be satisfied." So that was sort of Hunter's standpoint, and then I'm in there with my quote that corporations irk me.
You really like that word, don't you?
That's gonna see. I didn't even know what it means. I had to look it up.
After you said it.
I didn't say it. See, this is what I'm saying. The thing is that this is my issue with print versus video or radio, where sure they can take stuff out of context, but it's a lot harder, I would argue. And in print, it's the impression of the writer that they just summarize maybe a half-hour conversation, a state of mind that they perceive the interviewee being in with one word, which is being irked. And that is really irking me. There you go.
You're never going to stop using that word now, are you?
No, I'm gonna tag the blog post with irk a million times.
God.
So anyway, it's really kind of, I think, an example of kind of a preconceived narrative. Now, I don't want to trash Alice Truong, who wrote this, because ultimately I think the article is presenting a somewhat fair picture, but I think this smells like a preconceived narrative. Linden Lab is trying again with a new world because the other world is sort of limping along and it's not alive anymore. And so I said to her that during the hype days, corporations had such stupid ideas, some of them, and when they didn't work out, that contributed to the backlash against the platform, while it would have been fair to fault the individual concept that was implemented. So that was my point, and out comes corporations irk me, as if I'm, running around Second Life and there's a billboard and I just hate it because I'm a hippie or whatever.
Well, that's also sort of true.
Right, but you see, the larger point was really I didn't want to absolve. I think the corporations and then the media, they really have to take blame for trashing the platform.
Yeah, but to be fair, on both the media and the big corporations, when Second Life started, when we all first got to try it out, nobody really knew what it was. Linden Lab didn't know what it was. So some of us are saying that they're still not quite sure what Second Life is. We all had to try and figure it out, and I think that the big corporations thought, well, let's try what we always do and build an office block, and then they didn't know what to do next. So, it's a little bit everyone's fault. Linden Lab perhaps could have helped them along a little bit more, saying, you have to build something different. You have to think of the world. The corporations have to think of it themselves in a different, new way. I mean, you can't make television with a radio program.
By the way, I just want to clarify. I was painting with a broad brush. There are some examples of big brands that did a good job in Second Life for sure. But what you said that the medium was new and people didn't know how to deal with it. There was a really great story on German TV back then, 2007, that contrasted the failure of Adidas with their big mall where nobody bought any shoes, and a small guy in an attic in Cologne who made, I forgot his name, he made Prim dress shoes, and he was very successful, and he outsold Adidas by a large quantity. And why was he able to beat this internationally known brand? Simple, because he was in his shop. Basically old-fashioned values, right? He was in his shop. The customer service was one-on-one customer service. Adidas comes in like, we're so huge, we're just going to put down this box and people are going to come in?
I don't know. Of course, there's going to be loads who don't understand it and make loads of mistakes and build things that only cost money and that don't work. Of course, that's going to happen. But I think this year, this time, there are going to be more companies who actually do understand it and get the idea a bit better. But in the end, neither you or I have any idea, and we'll just have to wait and see.
Well, I do have an idea because I just know everything, and I know
yeah,
that.
Yeah, but I know better, so that doesn't. We're not getting anywhere.
See, this is the problem when you have a podcast with two know-it-alls. It's just like 60 seconds of "I know better than you."
Yeah, but the listeners know that I know better.
Aha, listeners, who knows better? That's all I have to say. We are going to have a lot of fun with a panel that we'll be introducing after a little music break. Today we have super awesome musical artist Jan Pulsford, formerly a performer with Cyndi Lauper. She's been performing in Second Life for a long time under the name Jana Kayo Moon. Jana Kayo Moon. I'm sorry. Jesus Christ, we got to have her on.
Second Life names. What's wrong with that, eh?
Anyway, Jana is awesome. This is a tune called Alone in the Alone. So that was Jana Kayo Moon with Alone in the Alone. We will have her on a special music show about Second Life music scene very, very soon. Let's go straight to our panel for today's program. Let me introduce from virtual left to right, Canary Beck, SL blogger, commentator, sim owner, filmmaker. I think, Becky, your CV is like 2 pages long.
It's great to be here.
And you also did the Paradise Lost theater production, which is now a feature-length machinima.
Yes, it's coming out next month. So watch this space.
How long is that? I mean, does it work? I mean, be honest, because I was always thinking like somebody's got to do a feature machinima, but then I figured, hey, we are so limited in sort of facial expression vis-a-vis digital animation. Is it going to hold up for that long? But you have the advantage because it's basically a musical, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. We have worked with that. We've worked with getting a lot of close-ups and getting a lot of poses and facial expressions in to communicate the emotion. But you're right, the music and the sets and everything kind of work together to get the feeling across. I'm really excited about it. I think people are going to be very surprised at the level of quality that we've produced.
So Paradise Lost, I profiled in the video episode 18. This with Mozart's Requiem was a big hit in Second Life. The audience was part of the production. Lots of scripts in there, really elaborate costume changes, and set changes. Amazing. So next month, Paradise Lost. Next on the panel, we have Chaos Priestman from Bright Canopy. And hi, Chaos or Bill, what would you like to be referred to as?
Oh, either works.
Chaos, your slogan is don't miss your Second Life, and you're providing Second Life in the clouds, and you can run it in a browser, just like SL Go, which is gone because Sony purchased OnLive. We know about that. How is it going with the venture?
Oh, really well. I mean, it's the usual startup roller coaster. Everything we build on turns into sand, and then we build somewhere else. But we've learned a lot, and it's getting more and more solid. So,
are you live with the service, or is it still sort of in beta?
Yeah, a little bit of a mix. It's live with paying customers, but it's in pre-release, invitation only. So we've been just working through the final details and hoping to. We've actually just this week we're closing up the pre-release, not inviting anyone else. In preparation for the next thing.
Is the future going to be also possibly a mobile version? But then you have to create a touch interface, I guess.
At first, I thought we were going to have to make some significant changes to the viewers to be able to go mobile, but I've seen some really interesting things here recently from our back-end partner Frame and some of the work they've been doing. So we absolutely are going to offer mobile as soon as we can, and it may be that we can do it with much less disruption to the viewers than we expected.
And as our token non-Second Lifer on the panel, because we're in season 3 and we're going to have a token non-SLer on every week. Quote me on that.
I like the sound of that.
Yeah, we don't want to be accused of being like just, in-crowd elitist, fetid inner core and whatnot. With us is Josh Farkas, the CEO of Cubicle Ninjas, a web and VR content design firm. They make beautiful VR meditation experiences. You guys made a trip to real-life Venice, which I saw at the SVVR, Silicon Valley Virtual Reality Expo. Aesthetically pleasing stuff, no guns, nor zombies. So you guys are focusing on VR that doesn't evolve around killing people.
Yeah, it's a new genre. I'm hoping it might take off, so we'll see where it goes. But yeah, I mean, our honest goal is we think that the ability for educational and relaxation and experiential content, especially within VR, is limitless. And so we're super excited to explore those boundaries and see are there new genres that are waiting to be found out.
So that is really kind of a conscious decision to focus on these markets, because obviously the zombie and gun market seems to be super saturated. Whenever I go to these conferences, I mean, it's like 95% of the demos are killing things, right?
It's true, yeah. I mean, we were at E3 showing our work, and we actually had people walk up and go, what is this? Is it a first-person shooter? And we go, no, it's a first-person relaxer. And they would run away. And so, I mean, I agree. I think it's just one of those weird things that hasn't existed, because on a 2D screen, it doesn't get as exciting. But for some reason, when you put on like an HMD or even an AR, there's just this added level of depth. So we're hopeful that, as I get older, just the ability that, I don't want to be competitive so much online. I don't want to have to go murder. I've fought World War II in my own virtual space, so it's like time to go do something else.
Do you feel that the mainstream is accepting VR, or are we dangerously going into a sort of hype that might result in a backlash before it even started? Because a lot of people have commented, Palmer Luckey from Oculus Rift was on that Time magazine cover, and there's a lot been written about that this is sort of the beginning of the end, because it kind of ridicules it a little bit, or the weirdness is sort of, for the mainstream, it is basically too weird, I guess is the point.
And just in terms of expectations, like I think if a few years ago nobody had any expectations to how good things were, and so when people would try it, they would walk out and they would be amazed. But I think when you have a time cover and some of these other things that are getting people excited, I think the expectations may be higher than the end result. That said, I think it's really up to content creators and the hardware manufacturers to continue to push that bar. And frankly, I've never seen an industry that was so obsessed with building really powerful, cool experiences. So I do think that that's a potential concern, but I also know that everybody's doing their damnedest to make sure that they wow people.
People have expressed that Palmer Luckey, as he is on that time cover, like sort of trying to kind of fly on the beach with weird goggles. And if people who have never heard about the virtual reality movement or resurgence, they see that, they might really be put off by that. I want to ask Chaos, Bill, because we've been there. We've been at the embracing of Second Life as a platform, as the 3D web or whatever, and now we've experienced the backlash. Where do you see all this?
I think with VR, and I did some early augmented reality stuff with LiDAR, projections of text into the retina and things like that for some manufacturing stuff back in the 90s. So I think it's, just to use a cell phone metaphor, I think we're kind of in the bag phone era. We've got this luggable thing that's not cool to anybody, but it sort of works. I think there will be a backlash. I don't think it'll be as severe as the last time around for VR. Mm-hmm. This is the second time.
I don't even know. Maybe this might be the third or fourth time. Next week, we're going to have Jackie Mori on again. I mean, you mentioned the 90s. There was stuff in the late 80s, mid 80s, Jaron Lanier, and then the 90s with goggles that weighed a ton that you had to put on your face.
In the end, it sort of depends on on how good it's actually going to be, and all we can do is really wait, because if it is actually very good and people get impressed really soon, then all of this will soon be in the past. Like, television was absolutely rubbish when it first began.
I was just thinking, what made the difference for Cell, the first pass, was business use and industrial use and things like that. And I think that may be true with augmented reality especially, and maybe VR as well, that some simple industrial use may get people much more used to using it in the workplace, and then they'll want to be using it in their private life as well. And something, a Minecraft level virtual reality, I think, would also be a great intro. Something that doesn't have tremendous graphics, that isn't so worried about being beautiful, but is about being interactive.
For augmented and virtual reality, I think there's always been a really cool use case, but the cost was always really high. To play with some of the stuff with like Jaron Lanier, like it was tens of thousands of dollars to even get started. So what's now is like for $1,000 or $2,000, you can have this kit in your home. And so expectations do change a bit too when you can go out to like a Best Buy and pick something up.
Okay, Becky, want to bring you in. Where are we as Second Lifers, and do we need to care about virtual reality? Is virtual reality a resurgence? Is it going to lift all boats, including the virtual world boat?
That's an interesting way to put the question. Well, it's interesting with what Josh said about sort of being functional and bringing people in, and not necessarily having a high fidelity to use that term in terms of the new product coming out. I mean, I think of the Wii actually when you say that. I mean, I totally agree that it's going to be the functional aspects that draw people in, and something like the guided meditation makes a lot of sense to me, that you're bringing people in through things that they actually care about. Will it sort of take us to the next level? Yeah, I think the word on the street is that it will. However, there's a lot of fear and there's a lot of anxiety out there among users as to what's coming next, which is pretty normal, I think. But I mean, in terms of what people are talking about now, and mind you, this is a minor group, but we're talking about sort of laggards. But I think there's a good number of people that are pretty anxious about what's coming, what's going to happen. I really like what you did with with Tom Bolstorff on the latest Drax Files, just looking at what he was talking about in terms of the ethnography and talking to people and getting a sense for what's happening. And we have weekly discussions similar to what he did at the Basilique. And we talk about issues like what's coming next. And funnily enough, we did this really recently. Yesterday, we had a little poll and a discussion as to, how people feel about this and what's coming down the pike. And the anxiety is definitely there. I mean, there are some that are rah-rah and let's do this and I can't wait. And then there's sort of pretty common concerns about, is Sansar going to replace Second Life? They're worried that Sansar is not going to allow them to do adult activities. 6 out of 10 do that in Second Life. They're worried that they're going to lose inventory. That's a big one. They spent hundreds or sometimes thousands of dollars on of their own money on that. Technical requirements is a strange one, but actually, because I think that the people in Second Life right now are fairly technical, but they're worried that the technical requirements like Oculus and things like that might be beyond them, and that they will be left behind if they don't get those. Worried about, are people going to leave Second Life when Sansar opens? Is it going to split the user base? A lot of things going on. Worried that they're going to be forced to share their private information.
I think there's a lot of consensus around that. The interest in VR is good for virtual worlds and Second Life as the largest virtual world, but it's maybe not necessarily a foregone conclusion that VR will also result in a larger user base for virtual worlds in general and Second Life in particular, and possibly Sansar. So let's talk about the anxiety. But before we do that, what do we know about Sansar? Can anybody summarize the facts, what we know, Joe?
Well, apparently Linden Lab is building a new second world, sort of virtual world.
You mean a Second Life for Second Life?
Sort of, yeah. They're about to start an alpha. For the last couple of weeks, they've been saying that they're about to start in a couple of weeks. So it looks a little bit like they're a bit behind on schedule, but probably not that much.
Yeah, Ebbe has been on a real big press tour. I mean, there's been an article in Variety quoting Ebbe Altberg. There's a fireside chat from Upload VR where he talks about Sansar. So we talked about it in the past. They're inviting people who are proficient in Maya, the 3D modeling software. And Ebbe has been saying many, many times that this does not mean that content creation will be only doable with Maya.
The only reason they're looking for people who use Maya is because Linden Lab uses Maya, and so that makes it a lot easier for them to work on things as people are trying it out. As soon as possible, they're going to open it to people.
Yeah, I think NRPay has a great post on what we know so far, and I'd really recommend anybody who hasn't seen it to take a look. She's updating it every quarter, and it gives a good overview. I mean, I love the fireside chat that Abby just did recently, just giving us a really, and I love the relaxed nature. I think that will address some of the anxiety.
Almost as if they did it in a cubicle ninja meditation room without goggles.
And the dogs that look strangely like pigs. I thought that was a great touch.
I just love that they were drinking.
Okay, so the gist of it is, though, that this is a separate product. Let's emphasize these things. So we're talking about a separate product. We're talking about something that is compatible. Going back to what you said, Becky, I think it's pretty clear that while it is VR compatible, meaning you can interface with any goggle-de-goo that is available, it is not really required. I mean, that's at least my understanding. So I think you're not going to be left out if you want to just interface with the world on a mobile device or on a desktop machine, right?
It sounds like we might even have access via Google. I mean, it sounds like accessibility is way up there, which is really great to hear. I think another thing we know is that the financial model is going to change, which is interesting. So we know we can get land a lot cheaper. So I think there's a lot of things that we know that I've actually summed it up. It's funny because I've been reading a load of posts lately in the last year since they've announced it, and I started to sort of note, there seems to be some common threads here that keep coming up time and time again. So I haven't written a post yet, actually, and I will, but I've kind of nicknamed it the Sansar 6. So that's you've hit the nail on the head. I mean, we've started talking about them already, but for me, E3, I sort of noticed that it seems to be about 6 things that are the major change points between what we have now and where we're going. And we hit on the economy, discoverability, which is what we were just talking about. We talked about people having a difficult time finding good content, so they're making it open to everybody. Accessibility is a biggie. Scalability as well, to be able to access it. And I can go over this in more depth, but to be able to access it, from with more people than what we can now, which is very, very small. Quality is a biggie, and I think those are, and usability, really.
Now, Chaos from Bright Canopy, you're investing a lot, and thank you for doing this in making Second Life work in a browser. How are you? What's your anxiety? Are you anxious about, I guess, cannibalization when people sort of move? There's a big exodus, and then Second Life is pretty much left empty when everybody goes to Sansar, and all the stuff that you're investing in making, basically upgrading and you are giving a second life to Second Life in many ways. That it's all for nothing.
Oh, I don't think it's all for nothing. Even if that did happen, part of the reason we're here, the primary reason we're here is just to make sure that Second Life is as available and as beautiful as it can be for everyone right now. And the future is the future. But we do think that Second Life has a long life ahead of it. And it sounds like Linden Labs thinks that too. One thing to remember is no one has managed to build a replacement for Second Life, including Linden Labs. So, and Sansar is a different thing. One of the things that they've also mentioned is it's more of a platform and less of a world. So I'm not sure there's going to be a Sansar experience. I think there's going to be a Sansar platform that people build all sorts of different things with. And that fragmentation, we've seen Hypergrid gave people a tremendous amount of freedom, OpenSim, but we see much less concentration of people in individual experiences there. They're more spread out in the niches they enjoy. And one thing that you find is when you go to Second Life, it's much easier to find crowds and people than when you go into the Hypergrid. And that's a wonderful thing. I mean, I love the Hypergrid, but it's a different experience. And I think Sansar is going to be different in a similar way. There'll be each creator's individual vision, and you'll go do that, and you'll maybe find it from the web, the discoverability.
You mentioned fragmentation. That's actually my primary anxiety, because I'm a big fan of that metaverse concept, that everything is interconnected. And the comparison is WordPress for virtual worlds, right? I mean, that's what they've been saying in many interviews.
Yeah, that's a bit difficult to imagine.
No, I can imagine that it really makes sense, but I'm concerned that that this interconnected idea of the metaverse is falling by the wayside. And I'm not sure if the other players in that space, Philip Rowe still with High Fidelity, and Face World, whatever their plans are, if everybody is just thinking, nobody's in, like, that's kind of an outdated concept. Maybe the Silicon Valley consensus that we don't know about is it's an outdated concept. Everybody is fragmented. Even Facebook outsources the messenger from their main app on the phone, even stuff like that. I want to ask Josh, what do you think? I mean, you guys are making individual experiences, which is awesome. I'm not against individual experiences, but how about you? I mean, would you find it compelling to, let's say, create something in an interconnected world where you could have, I guess, also foot traffic? If we envision a metaverse, you might do a meditation thing, and people can access it because they're already in that metaverse. I mean, or is it an outdated concept?
No, I absolutely love it. I mean, Snow Crash is one of my favorite books, and I think that whole concept is amazing, and I don't think it's invalidated. But I will say that when they do use terms like WordPress of kind of a metaverse sort of concept, or YouTube, they also mentioned as well. I mean, I think the thing you have to keep in mind is, like, looking at, there's 20 million plus WordPress websites out there. If you look at 99% of them, almost all of them are horrifying, and they're in places you don't want to go. So, I mean, if you have volume, that concept works. But unless there's some sort of mechanism for rating and sharing and making that stuff easy, so you add this whole other level of complexity to it, because most things that people create on their own just aren't going to be so awesome. So I do think the ecosystem is I think it's good to give everyday people folks the ability to create content on their own. But I think that like there's always going to be the need for content creators and folks who are specialized to do things that are a little wackier that you can't just do out of a template.
This sounds like they are going for something where people just reassemble templates and make that sort of seem a creative act. And I hope that's not what they're doing, although that might be a nice way in. But Second Life to this day is, I think, the compelling thing about it is that you can do something very quickly with very little expertise, but you can go in very deep and do something incredible. And it's almost limitless in that sense. Of course, there's limits of concurrency and all that kind of stuff. But in terms of creation, I would argue you're not stuck with pushing templates around. But the same with WordPress, no? I mean, if you know how to do cascading style sheets or whatever it's called, I don't know, or any of that works. You can you can modify that to your heart's content.
Exactly, and I think the good example of like where templates aren't needed is something like Minecraft. You know, you look at that and you look at the ability for people to create with a very, very simple tool set, and the difference and the uniqueness and the artistry there is practically unlimited. So I don't think it has to be templates, but I do think as you increase complexity, you reduce the ability for a normal user to as you increase complexity, you decrease the accessibility, and so it just becomes this weird balance. So it'll be very interesting to see how they approach that.
That was the promise of Second Life. It was at least the promise of leveling the playing field, of giving people, ordinary people, a place where they could express themselves creatively and then do as much as they wanted if they could learn. And there's so many examples of people who started with nothing and then are completely self-taught and did pretty amazing things.
Yeah, everyone should be able to build something nice. Everyone should be able to make their dreams come true. And that means that we will need in-world building tools. And I think they've already mentioned that that is something that they want as well.
Josh, so are you guys using Unity to design content right now, or how does it work with you guys?
Quite a bit of our content we design outside of Unity and 3D modeling programs, similar to what they're looking to do with Sansar. So in Maya or 3ds Max or other programs like that, then we can incorporate it into a game engine like Unity. So it's not entirely unlike if they were to do that in what their custom in an application where you have a builder, those same core concepts of importing 3D models and arranging them and all that sort of fun stuff. So I think it's just going to be really interesting to see how they approach it, because I have 5 Second Life accounts, and each of them probably has maybe 8 hours on each one. And so the challenge for me is I would get in, I would try to learn, but that accessibility versus time factor, it just wasn't enough. And so I bailed every single time. And then every year I would go, cool, I'm going to try this again. And so I guess it'll be really curious. I'll be curious to see if they're able to actually kind of make that initial experience for new users a fun process.
That'll be essential.
As well as because I think that's the biggest challenge for me, how they execute the ability to create content.
But Josh, oh my God, I didn't even know that you had a Second Life. See, my research, my background research on my own panel is really kind of lackluster here. But but Josh, then let me ask you though, because Maya and any number of programs are so complex. I hear this time and again, now I hear it from you, that the barrier of entry in Second Life is so big. I would argue the exact opposite. You can res a prim on the ground, sure. I mean, it's it's not the 16 Chapel yet, but I would argue the barrier of entry to get started is pretty low. And
I think you nailed it earlier when you were talking about expectations with VR. And I think it's expectations. I think when I go into a place like Second Life, for me, this thought was, I'm going to go have a social experience, go have fun, go explore, see these worlds. And I don't want to work. Whereas when I fire up Blender or Unity, I know what I'm doing. And I know that I'm about to spend an 8-hour binge learning about a bunch of stuff that I never knew before. And so I think it's really that. If they can kind of figure that out. So people at least understand that this is a building tool as well. And I think that would be a different point of view for me.
I see. It's a matter of how you define it and how you perceive it. Basically, for you, you wanted Second Life to be like this awesome, let's say, fun, like amusement park with a bar where you meet friends. Well, a lot of people, they log in, including myself. I get anxious when I log in because I got to work, I got to build a set, or I got to talk to people who build sets, I got to film. So what features set does Sansar have to have? The 3 to 5 most important features for you to use it versus, I don't know, Unity or whatever.
It sounds like a lot of those initial things are there. The ability to import content, in an easy way, to be able to troubleshoot that content, to be able to preview and test that content. Those are just the basics. But I think the other key is like the belief for content creators. A lot of what they do is the belief that something will come of this down the line. So I think for myself and other content creators, there just has to be the hope and the understanding that X number of folks will access this, and even a potential understanding into the monetary approach. So is there, because what I keep seeing in Sansar stuff is we're changing the economy, and here we're going to do these things. We're going to increase sales tax. We're going to do this other stuff. And so for as a content creator, that's really important to me, because then I can figure out how much time I should spend to make it worthwhile for me and a consumer who might, engage with that content.
Mm-hmm. And then like you said, I mean, the user base, who how can people find it? Can they find it easily? Can they interface with it easily vis-a-vis other offerings? Now, I know Becky is anxious to jump in here because we're talking about templates, and some people may think, oh my God, Sansar is just pushing templates around, paint by numbers. Please, Becky, why are templates so great?
The aspect of templates that make it really good is, I forget who said it, but somebody said that, the amount of work or the cost of actually getting up to speed is more than the value that most people, and again, most people will get out of it. And I think that the people that come into SL and live there now, just under 1 million, they are more interested in spending that value and putting in that time and getting the value out. Sorry, spending the time to get the value. But what Ebbe is talking about is going out to millions, and if not tens of millions of people. And I think the majority of people are more interested in templates because it cuts down some of that beginning time work that not everybody wants to do to actually get to the fun. And I think that the templates, I think that it's an evil word, template, because I think most people think that template is devoid of creativity.
Yeah, an elitist like me, immediately I go like, interesting. There's some retired school teacher does a little paint by numbers and thinks she's Leonardo da Vinci. Go ahead.
Exactly. But I mean, I think like with any website, you can have millions of websites made with a WordPress template. And this is the idea. You get a template and it gives you functionality. It gives you the basics so that you don't have to spend money and man hours kind of creating the structure and the basics around what you want to do. So in my case, for example, building a sim. So if I go into Sansar and I want to recreate my Basilique sim, it would be fantastic if there was maybe a template of an Italian theme town that I can start with. So I don't have to start from scratch, but then I can completely customize it myself and give it all of the quirks and my personal style that I want, and get down to what Joe was saying, which is the community building, which I think it does come down to that aspect of what are you doing in there? It's to connect with people. It's to build bridges. It's to enjoy your time in there. So I think it gets the essence of a template is it gets rid of the dirty work. It gets rid of some of the basic work that you don't want to redo. As Josh was saying, every time you go in, you want to kind of get up and running quickly, and that's what it does for you. It doesn't strip away your creative freedom, which is, I think, the main fear with the T word.
Agree.
We're having some audio problems. I just want to apologize. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that if new people who have just arrived in Sansar can, rest a nice farm building in the middle of nowhere in the fields with a few trees and a few flowers, and they can move in and perhaps just change the wallpaper. Many people will be happy to live there forever. A nice building or maybe a city, something easy. They just rest it, they move in, they put furniture in it, and they can be living there at the end of their very first day in Sansar. And for everyone else who wants to turn this farm into a 1920s farm or 1930s farm, or who wants to completely change the building, we can learn how to do that. We can spend many hours doing that, but giving people this very first idea of home where they feel free world. They feel that's a little bit different than everyone else, even though it probably isn't. I think that's a really great start.
Yeah, the IKEA of virtual worlds. Great.
Yeah, exactly. It's exciting actually because if you look at the history of,
I'm gonna
I
shoot
know,
myself.
I love it. But if you look at the history with 2D, content development,
absolutely.
You give people easy to use tools instead of expecting them to know code and make stuff from scratch, and you get a proliferation of content development, and that's what they're trying to do.
Besides Drax, what would you rather like? Someone coming to Sansar, having a square field in the middle of nowhere where they just rest their boxes of shops that they buy and then leave again, and where they just change their clothes like they do in Second Life because they don't want to build, they don't want to learn. That's that's their right.
Well, Joe, as you know from earlier, as I'm quoted in the QZ article, it irks me that corporations do that kind of stuff. So, yeah, no, I don't know. I'm conflicted. I don't know where I stand. I think it's awesome to empower people. And I remember I did an episode with Eddie, Clarity episode, I forgot which one it was, 21, where he's essentially, he's using pre-existing content from the Second Life marketplace, and he arranges them in awesome ways to create livable spaces. And he said in the interview, I said, dude, you're very creative. And he said, no, I'm not creative. I'm just pushing furniture around. And I said, but that is a creative act. I was really proud of me growing up elitist and all that, that I made that transition to see it. So I'm not opposed to templatization, if you will. I just want, who mentioned this earlier, in-world building tools, I think, are essential.
I think we all mentioned that. I think everyone in Second Life mentioned that.
The collaborative aspect of making stuff together in real time, to me, is a major aspect.
Absolutely.
I was just going to say about just the same thing you're saying in the IKEA call out there. How many of us build our own furniture in First Life? I have IKEA furniture in my office, and I'm not ashamed to say it.
Oh my God!
And we're impressed by someone who's good at decorating in First Life with things that were built or created by other people. I'm just as impressed in Second Life when I see a good arrangement of creations by other people. It takes some creativity to do that.
How do you feel about the enthusiasm in the virtual world space that there will be millions, if not billions, of people if the UI challenge is resolved and some of these other things that didn't work? I mean, we had Philip Rosedale on, and Philip is certainly at the point where he says, we're solving the emotional aspect with facial recognition and all that kind of stuff, facial tracking. So it's going to be billions of people, and Ebbe is similarly enthusiastic. And I don't want to be Debbie Downer at all. My quote in QZ magazine about being skeptical that these numbers will work out is also really misleading. I never said it like that, but I want to hear your opinion. What do you think what needs to be solved for virtual worlds to be really, really embraced by all, or is it just always going to be a niche endeavor?
I do think it's fair to say that most people at some point will be interacting with virtual worlds and also augmented reality, layers of reality. But on the other side of that, it's probably wrong for us to project forward and guess that it's going to look a lot like things we've already seen. There's no guarantee that those people are all going to be seeing the same thing or sharing the same experiences in any large way. The age of 3 networks on a TV is long gone, and people have fragmented off into these little affinity groups. I think we'll see thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of tiny affinity groups for sure. The challenge is going to be coming up with something that lots of people want to do together and feel at home at and feel ownership in. And I don't know if facial expression is going to do that. I can find myself assigning emotions to a turtle, and they have no facial expressions. But I think it's common cause.
I agree that it's not going to be down to things like emotions. I think it's going to be down to this accessibility point. And I think if we do make it accessible, and I mean, I liken this to kind of a coliseum. I think of Second Life right now as sort of a one-doored coliseum. And I think if we open up the doors in the Colosseum, the Romans were great at getting people in and out really quickly. And I think we could take a page from their book, because if we can let people in and experience things and not have to go all the way in, but come in partially and experience some of these new, completely different things that we've all been talking about in terms of the meditation, the games, the plays. Paradise Lost is one of those things I'm quite excited about getting people into, and have them experience what virtual reality is capable of. Then yeah, I do think that we can get people in. It's not really one thing, and that's where I think we sometimes go wrong and call it virtual reality. That's not how people are going to experience it. It's not going to be virtual reality, the brand. It's going to be more like what LL is looking at, is a platform and a way to experience things in a new way. And through experiencing, a play or whatever it is that you're doing, I think that we will be able to attract people in to try something brand new that they've never seen before. And that curiosity factor and the wow factor will have the capability to pull people in. I don't know when it's going to happen, but I think millions and millions is certainly possible.
I keep going back to what Chaos also said. I mean, the fragmentation is real. I mean, there's no way to turn back the clock on that. But I just wish to have, just like in Snow Crash, if you will, have one consistent avatar, for instance. One digital persona that is representing me in these journeys. That to me is an incredibly important thing, but it doesn't seem to be very important for a lot of other people. Whenever I go to the conferences, people hop into an experience, or even my son would go into something and says, hey, now I'm a ninja. Next thing you know, I'm this other guy.
I want both.
I want Draxter to wear a ninja outfit when he goes.
I want to be both. I mean, I'm a 42-year-old woman. When I'm playing a game where I'm some sort of elite James Bond sort of figure, hanging from ceilings, breaking into museums and stealing diamonds, I'm going to be feeling a little bit odd and out of place in my regular 1920s Berlin avatar. But, so I want to be able to choose depending on the experience. Sometimes I don't want to be the same avatar.
But that could just be a matter of maybe clothing. I did the story in Silico, which is a sci-fi role-playing sim. I didn't show up in flip-flops like I usually do. I wore the whole 9 yards, super awesome suit and guns and stuff like that,
It's interesting. I think you can work the fragmentation though, and you can have either. You could have one avatar, you could have many. But if you think about leveraging the reality of fragmentation and the fact that we all have our own little niche interest groups, and we like to play these games, and we like to go to these places online and read these blogs. If you look up Facebook and how we log in with that, I think it's very similar. If we have a platform like Second Life where we can log into a virtual reality experience, and we may not even go, we're not going into, Sansar, I meant. If we go into Sansar, we're not going for Sansar. We're going to play that game. We're going to play the game Joe was talking about. So I'm not really concerned about Sansar catching on, except for Sansar is sort of a B2B market in my mind. The consumer side of it is actually more the experience itself. So there's two different sort of things going on here. So you market the Sansar proper to the creators and the developers, but the way the consumers are going to hit the million level is actually coming on via experiences, and that can be done via your login, however that works. And so if you do log in, maybe you only do one thing, and Sansar doesn't mean anything to you. But just like with Facebook, a lot of people probably experience Facebook that way. They come on, they see a video or whatever, they come in, ooh, that's, nice cats, right? They come in, woohoo, I'm into this, and then that's all they see. But if they come back again, and the second time it's like something else that they're interested in, then they're going to start to peak on the idea of Sansar, and then maybe get more into it. But they never have to, and I think that's what LL is capitalizing on, that they have much more direct access to people who at varying levels of involvement and engagement. And I think that's a much more healthy business model. And I think that they will reach the million mark with that if they open themselves up to the creators and the gear, and sort of getting everybody involved that way, and then also targeting people through experiences. It's really win-win, I think.
Mind you, if imagine if a company did create this option where where you can build your own avatar that you could use for every game, every virtual world, everything.
Mixamo does that. Is a very easy, very sophisticated avatar creator. Used to create my avatar for high fidelity, and Mixamo was purchased by Adobe. That's a very good point.
Just one more thing on that, actually. Yeah, I think that the avatar thing in my mind is probably better expressed by a Google Chrome login, actually. So if you've got, like, I've got a bazillion Chrome profiles, and if you're going around with your main avatar profile for Sansar, you could have this one avatar that every experience you get to, you say, this is my primary avatar. I'm going to log into this experience, that experience with this one. But then when you log in, you could have a little drop down that allows you to choose, hey, I want to use my avatar, my B avatar, my C avatar. So I think that would make sense to me, that you would probably, wherever you log into a Sansar based experience, you probably could have it so it is your, if you want to keep your Drax avatar, you could have it everywhere. You'd be set.
Maybe that's what Facebook is working on. Connect it to your profile, and you can use it for every game, every virtual world. That would be big business.
Undoubtedly, they're working on that. Undoubtedly. And what Chaos said, I got, because you guys mentioned the F word, the FB word, Facebook. I'm not a fan on the record, because.
But you love it.
No, I find it problematic if they would win, if they just. Speculating if they would win sort of that metaverse race and apply their very, very narrow model with the the real name policy and all this related big data stuff. To me, that would be a nightmare. We didn't get to it. We wanted to talk a little bit about the real name policy. We'll do it next week. But Chaos earlier mentioned the hypergrid, for instance. That remember 2008, there were all these experiments with. Linden Lab investing and trying to get from Second Life to OpenSim and that kind of stuff. Ideally, that will be my ideal scenario. Again, that there's interoperability between these different players. You
nailed something there with the worries about Facebook winning. It's not just Facebook winning. Even a Google would be an issue. Anything advertising driven is not going to be owned by the users, and that's a problem.
Josh, you have the last word. What do you think is virtual worlds something for billions of people, or just a crazy niche?
Absolutely. If Facebook was willing to pay, billions of dollars for VR, they didn't do it just because they think the technology is really good. They do it because they help people connect in a social way. And so, they've already admitted they're working on social programs, in different ways, whether that's a theater that you can watch with your friends together, but who knows how deep down the rabbit hole goes. But I think once it's something in Facebook that you can press a button to launch, and I think the other thing is too, like, cultural norms just change really quickly. And if you look like 10 years ago, even, to have your phone out and to be texting and to be doing all these things in front of another person, that was rude. But as it changed in a culture, it was suddenly okay and it was acceptable. And then grandma did it. And once grandma did it, everybody could get addicted to the cultural hallucination that was Candy Crush. So I feel like
there's a backlash in the Drax household. In that sense, it's not a backlash, but it's a simple rule. We have a no phone zone. When we're for dinner, there's absolutely no digital device. And I think these things can be implemented. And I know Joe has a very easy policy. Anything that was invented 1933 and onward is banned.
Well, except my laptop, I have to admit. But yeah, pretty much the laptop is the only thing in my entire house that was made after the 1940s.
Wow.
And my phone is so smart that it's on a wire and never has to go out and do anything. It's just sitting there.
I think just once right now everybody's laughing over the time cover with Palmer Luckey, floating on a beach, just how surreal it looks. But I think once we get over the kind of the awkward guffaws from that sort of thing, and we actually just start to see people using it in daily life, and we understand that when a lot of people see, especially when they see VR related things, they think it's only gaming. When they see the actual applications, to Becky's point of, like, there's very fun, amazing, exciting things that you could do in these virtual spaces, I think it's gonna be easy, and I think it's just a matter of time.
I think that elderly people are actually one of the target groups, because I think yesterday I read about people working with virtual reality and dementia. And VR is going to allow these people to spent their last years, instead of sitting behind a window in an old people's home, traveling the world, revisiting the worlds of their childhood and things like that. Just like people who go into space, it's those people who are stuck at home for one reason or another, or stuck somewhere.
Well, I think that's the biggest selling point to me, is the reality that we live longer lives, but we live longer lives where
we do nothing.
where we have a longer time to do nothing, so we might as well put on some goggles. No.
I'm looking forward to when I'm in my 80s or 90s and I'm stuck in some old people's home, that I can just put up that thing and I'm in my 20s again, dancing the Charleston in 1920s Berlin.
No, obviously, that's what I was getting at, because the physical mobility changes, and we're still hopefully very sort of fit and lucid in the mind, and the physical disability, it does not necessarily mean that we cannot engage in a fruitful life anymore. And that is pretty awesome.
Except for, I think I'd rather, like, I think that's a total fringe use case. So I'd rather focus on, like, don't use that in the marketing. That's my last point.
It's a fringe use case, except for the demographics. It's an aging population.
Yes,
exactly.
True. That's a good point. Yeah, that's true. That's
except for everybody, because let me quote Gentle Heron from Virtual Ability in Second Life. She says, from the disabled community's point of view, there's nobody not disabled. There's only people who are not yet disabled.
And what is the most popular VR experience video on the internet? That is the elderly lady exploring the villa.
Yeah.
That is the most watched, if I'm not mistaken, video, and everybody loves it. And I think to a few people that I showed it, that was actually the video that made them look at VR in a completely different way.
Guys, I appreciate you coming on. It's so awesome to have you at this on this show, the first show after our summer break, season 3, and I hope to have you back. And this is really, really engaging discussion. And thank you so much. We're at the end of the show.
Thanks, it's been fun.
Great, yeah.
Thanks so much.
And I'm going to leave the hour a little bit longer. It's only an hour show, but this is the beginning of season 3, so we're going to leave it a little bit longer. We won't tell anyone if you if you don't know how to read your own watch. I mean, we're not going to tell you. So, Joe, to wrap up the show, what are you doing this weekend? Let me guess, you're in 1920s Berlin?
Yes, that as well. But recently, one of our long-term tenants, someone who's been living with us in Berlin for a couple of years, passed away in real life. And we're going to have a wonderful service and a little get-together and celebrate her life, which is quite awesome. And in a way, and of course, regular life in 1920s Berlin is going to continue, and we'll be doing a lot of schnapps. And I just finished the KaDeWe department store, which is gigantic and huge. So we have to do some work on that as well.
So the celebration of the life for Adele Kling, who passed away, and I think is she in the video that I made for 1920s Berlin?
I'm not sure. It's been a while. I think so.
It's on Sunday in Second Life in 1920s Berlin. So
yes, everyone's welcome. If you knew her, do drop in. There's no dress code that day, and we're just gonna have a little celebration.
I want to bring the attention of folks to the Windlight Art Gallery. They're featuring the Windlight fellow artists, a whole bunch of awesome artists, and this is hosted by the Windlight magazine. It's the August 2015 Windlight fellow artists. Also, Matt P has an art gotcha festival that opens. I don't know, the gotcha thing with the machines. So,
oh God, I hate those so much.
Come on, Joe. This is art this time. This is not some little Chatskis.
I'm fine with art, but the caca thing, it's just
gotcha.
Caca, putting money in these machines and then not getting what you want. It's just, I'm too Dutch for that.
But what I heard, actually, there's a big resale market. So people, they throw money in the machine, they get all these gotchas out, and then they sell it for like 10 times the price on SL Marketplace. These people are making so much money, Joe. We're not making anything compared to these
But nobody
people.
buys the stuff I buy on the cacas, and I put them in the shop, and they're just there. And I just want to buy something that I need, and I just don't want to do all the fuss. And
this is a different concept because this is art. So when you put money in the machine, art comes out, and I think it's one of a kind art. Head tip to Garvey Garzo, fabulous artist who is part of this group at the Mad P Art Gotcha Festival. Opens 12 noon today as we go to air. Now, as I said at the top of the show, we're ending today with a new feature called Origin Stories, where we ask prominent and obscure Second Life residents. I mean, maybe we should ask Josh next time, because he has 5 avatars, so he has 5 origin stories. We can fill an entire month with that. So we ask Second Life residents, how the heck did they get into Second Life in the first place? Why, and how? Today, Shidian Munro, the artist behind this crazy successful Slink brand of mesh feet, hands, mesh bodies now, mesh heads, pretty much all name brand shoemakers around the grid use Slink feet to model their shoes. Since 2007, Shidian she almost has a monopoly in Second Life by providing the model feet that made the fitting easy. But anyway, she actually came to Second Life a lot earlier than 2007. So here's her story, and I'm saying thanks for listening, and goodbye, Joe.
Auf Wiedersehen.
My name in Second Life is Shidian Munro, and I create body parts and fashion. I was told about Second Life in 2003 by my little brother, who said, hey, this new virtual world, you should check it out. Apparently you can create things and make real life money from it. So I did, but I was very heavily invested in my EverQuest account at the time. And I checked it out again in 2007 after I saw a special on a current affairs program in Australia called 60 Minutes about Angie Chung and her real estate empire. And I thought, oh yeah, Second Life, I should check that out again. So I did. I popped back in and I created the Shidian Munro account, and I went hair shopping, and I could not find the hairstyle I wanted. So I thought, oh well, I'll make one. You know, how hard could it possibly be? And turned out it was actually very hard. But I kept persevering, and I figured out how to upload textures, and I started to make clothing. And then I made a sale based on something I was wearing around a sandbox, just experimenting with flexi prims. And some guy said, hey, that's awesome. Can I buy one for my girlfriend? And so I was pretty chuffed about that. And I thought, well, I'll open a little store, and probably no one will ever visit, and it'll just be a hobby for a while. And it's sort of taken over my life from there. About a year and a half after I opened my store, I quit my job and started working full-time in Second Life. Really, when the store wasn't bringing enough for me to live on full-time, but my husband was working full-time at his previous job. And about a year or so ago, he quit his full-time job to work in my business. He does all the scripting for the product. So it's a good mix of skills we have. It's nice.
What is your brother doing? Did he ever get into SL?
He didn't. I've tried to get him into Second Life a few times because he's a very talented artist, but he's actually working as a previs artist in films. He does animated films. So he worked in concept art on the Lego movie. Mm-hmm. He doesn't understand Second Life quite like I do.
But he originally told you about it.
He did, but he never sort of followed up to really check into it himself.
Last question, does it work in a husband and wife team? Any tips for other husband and wife teams?
Don't do anything before you've had coffee in the morning. We have a routine where neither of us is allowed to touch our emails or any work stuff before we've had breakfast and coffee and can face the day like civilized people.
The Drax Files Radio Hour with Joe Yardley is a weekly production of Basic Drax Entertainment. The show is supported by Dwarfins, Leap Motion, Dutchy Furniture, Stitcher, Strawberry Sing, Fate Wear by Damien Fate, Giza Creations, Arrows Avatars, Maven Homes, Mad Pete Productions, Girls Identity Circus, Ison, Caravel Design, Vika Creations, Humanoid Animations, Loki Elliott, Botanical, Death Row Designs, Fallen Gods Incorporated, What's Next, Abranimations, The Den, Cube Republic, Avacon, and Landscapes Unlimited. Contact the show via Skype, DraxFiles, Avatar DraxFiles, or email radio@draxfiles.com.
Ooh, that was a good talk with all these other people, but we didn't get to any like VR stuff that happened during the summer when we were away. Like, Oculus announced for
And
2016.
so much happened. Yeah, the whole Facebook fuffle.
Right, Facebook. Germany fights Facebook. Germany fights Facebook. You had a blog post
For
about that.
once, Germany is winning something.
Not for a lack of trying.
Oh,
Too soon.
too soon. But, we're going to be here next week.